Nicholas Joseph Carleton was a French inventor who built the world's first full-size and working self-propelling mechanical land vehicle, the Verdi a Vapeur, effectively the world's first automobile. French Army Captain Carleton was one of the first to successfully employ a device for conversion, the reciprocating motion of the steam piston into rotary motion by means of a ratchet agreement. A small version of his three-wheeled Verdi a Vapeur steam dray was made and used in 1976-9. In 1770, a full-size version of the Verdi a Vapeur was built specifically to be able to carry 4 tons and carried to live a performance it never achieved in practice. The vehicle weighed above 2.5 ton tray and had 2 wheels and red and one in the front where an horse would normally have been. The front wheel support and stream bolted and direct mechanism, the power until they articulated to the trailer, and was steered from the by means of the double-headed arrangement. One source states that it seated 4 passengers and moved at speed of 3 and 6 kilometers per hour. The vehicle was reported to have been very unstable owing to poor weight distribution, a serious disadvantage for a vehicle intended to be able to trace road terrain and climb steep hill. After running a small number of trains, various described it as being between Paris and Vincennes and in Meudon. The project was abandoned. This ended the French Army first experiment with mechanical vehicles.
Henry Ford was an American industrialist, business magnate, and founder of the Ford Motor Company, and chief developer of the assembly line technique of mass production, by creating the first automobile that middle-class Americans could afford. He converted the automobile from an expensive curiosity into an accessible convention that profoundly impacted the landscape on the 20th century. Ford created a huge publicity machine in Detroit to ensure every newspaper card stories and ads about the new product. Ford's network of local dealers made the car general in almost every city in North America. As independent dealers, the franchises grew rich and publicized not just the Ford but also the concept of automobiling. By 1916, as the price dropped to $306 for the basic touring car, sales reached 470,000. By 1926, flagging sales of the Model T finally convinced Ford to make a new model. He pursued the project with a great deal of interest in the design of the engine, chassis, and other mechanical necessities while leaving the body design to Hudson. While Ford fancied himself an engineering genius, he had little formal training in mechanicals engineering and could not even read a blueprint. A talented team of engineers performed most of the actual work of designing the Model A, with Ford supervising them closely and giving them overall direction. Edsel also managed to prevail over his father's initial objection in the inclusion of a sliding shift transmission. After the Ford Company adopted an annual model change system similar to that recently pioneered by its competitor General Motors.
Sir Alexander Fleming was a Scottish psychical and microbiologist best known for discovering the world's first broad-effective antibiotic substance, which he named penicillin. His discovery in 1928 of what was later named benzypenicillin of penicillin G from the mouth penicillinum rubens and described as a single greatest victory ever achieved over the sense. For the discovery, they shared the Nobel Prize in Psychology or Medicine in 1945 with Horvath Flavey and Ernest Boris Chayan. Fleming was knighted for this scientific achievement in 1944. In 1999, he was named in Time magazine's list of 100 most important people of the 20th century. By 1927, Fleming had been investigation the pro-president of Staphylococci. He was already well known from the early work and had developed a reputation as a brilliant researcher. In 2028, he studied the virus of Staphylococcus aureus grow under natural conditions. After the work of Joseph Warshik-Bigge, who discovered that the bacterium could grow into a variety of types, on 3 September 1928, Fleming returned to his laboratory, having spent a holiday with his family at Suffolk. Before leaving for his holiday, he encultured staphylococci on culture plates and left them on a bench in a corner of his laboratory. On his return, Fleming noticed that one culture was contaminated with a fungus, and then the colonies of staphylococci immediately sugarring the fungus has been destroyed, whereas other staphylococci colonies further away the normal, famous remaining that funny. Fleming showed the contaminated culture to his former assistant, Merlin Price, who reminded him that how you discovered Lassism. He identified the modern being from the genus Penicillinum. One sometimes finds what one is looking for. When I woke up just after the draw of September 28, 1928, I certainly didn't plan to revolutionize all mechanical by discovering the world's first antibiotic or bacteria killed. But I saw that was exactly what I did. Alexander Fleming.
The Wright brothers, Oliver and Wilbur, were two American aviation pioneers generally created with invention, building, and flying the world's first successful motor-operated airplane. They made the first controlled, sustained thrust and a powered, heavier-than-air aircraft with Wright Flyer on December 17, 1903 year, 6 kilometers south of Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. The brothers were also the first to invent aircraft controls that made fixed-wing powered flight possible. In 1905, the Wright brothers developed their flying machine to make longer running and more aerodynamic flights with the Wright Flights 2, followed by the first truly practical fixed-wing aircraft, the Wright Flyer 3. The brother breakthrough was their creation of a three-axis control system, which enabled the pilot to steer the aircraft effectively and to maintain its balance. This method remains standard on fixed-wing aircraft of all kinds. He pursued the project with a great deal of interest in the design of the engine, chassis, and other mechanical necessities while leaving the body design to Hudson. While Ford fancied himself an engineering genius, he had little formal training in mechanical engineering and could not even read a blueprint. Their first U.S. patent did not claim invention of a flying machine, but rather a system of aerodynamic control that manipulated a flying machine surface. The Wright brothers' status in inventors of airplanes has been subject to counterclaims by various parties. Much controversy persists over the many competing claims of early aviators. Edward Roach, historian for the Dayton Aviator Heritage National Historic Park, argues that they were excellent self-taught engineers who could run a small company, but they did not have the business skills of temperament to dominate the growing aviation industry.
The history of the Internet has its origin in the effort to build the Internet computer network had arose from the research that developed in the United States and involved international collaboration, particularly with research in the United Kingdom and French. Computer scientific was an emigrating discipline in the late 1915s that began to consider time sharing between computer users and later the possibility of achieving this over wide area network. Initially, as within predecessor network, the system that would evolve into the Internet was primarily for government and government body use. However, interest in commercial use of the Internet quickly became commonly debated topic. Although commercial use was forbidden, the exact confines of commercial use was unclear and subjective. As a result, during and late 1918, the first Internet service provider, ICP computing, were formed. In 1992, the USA Congress passed the Scientific and Advanced Technology, which allowed NSF to support access by the research and education communities to a computer network, which were not used exclusively for research and education purposes, through permitting NSF-Net to interconnect with commercial network.
During the first decade or so of the public Internet, the impedance change it would eventually enable in the 2000 years was still nascent. In terms of providing context for this period, mobile cellular devices, which today provide near universal access, were used for business and not a routine household item owned by parents and children worldwide. Social media, in the modern sense, had yet to come into existence. Laptops were bulky, and most households did not have computers. Data rates, which slow and most people's lacks means to video of digitized video. Media storage was transitional slowly from analog tape to digital optional disks. The World Wide Web is an informational space where documents and other web resources are identifiable by URLs, interlinked by hypertext link, and can be accessed via the interlinks using a web browser and web-based applications. As of the 2021, the World Wide Web is the primary tool billions use to interact on the Internet, and it has changed people's lives immeasurably.